Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tyler Robertson with Diesel Laptops. For those of you that do not know me, here's what I look like. So I am the founder and CEO of Diesel Laptops, as I stated. I've been in the industry for about 20 years. I try to make myself pretty much available to anybody that wants to talk to me. There's my email address. There I am on LinkedIn. But really, the real expert that we have here today is Travis Roberts. So I'm going to let Travis introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his experience and what he does with Diesel Laptops.
All right, everyone. I'm Travis Roberts, and I'm the off-highway product manager here at Diesel Laptops. A little bit about my background. I've got 15 years experience as a technician, so actually being out in the field working on these things. And a lot of my duties here with the company, just to start with, are kind of more on the research and development side. I also do some in-house training for our technical and sales departments. And I assist with the technical repair information department. But probably the most important part of that job is actually going out in the field, testing these units and kind of comparing that functionality to the OEM tools, and also bringing that knowledge back to educate our sales and technical support teams. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Tyler here.
So if you've never heard of Diesel Laptops, I just want to explain a little bit about who we are. So we're not that old of a company. We've only been around for about 4.5 years. We're located here in South Carolina. We have about 130 employees. We just moved into this new building you see on the picture up on the screen, and that literally happened last week. So we're brand new here to this building, but we really consider ourselves the experts on diesel diagnostic equipment, on repair information, parts information, and diesel technician training. So what we do here is really take all those things and surround them around a diagnostic tool, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But let's just kind of get right into the meat of this, because you're here to learn about off-highway diagnostics. So I'm going to do a poll on what kind of equipment that you work on. So let's throw that up on the screen there, and hopefully everyone has a chance to answer the questions that are showing up there. So if you could please do that, pick the one that you work on the most. We always love to get an idea of who is in our audience, what you guys do, what you work on. It really helps us a lot. There's a wide variety of people that we work with. Some people work on everything, some work with on very few, but let's see how the results come across there. So the results are populated on your screen. You can kind of see what everyone works on. Obviously, a lot of people working on commercial trucks and construction. We've got some ag people in here, a little bit of marine as well, and of course we have some in the auto industry. So let's go ahead and hide that and kind of get back to what we were talking about. So let's talk about the difference between truck and off-highway, because I think a lot of people just kind of look at it and say, well, they're both diesel engines, they're just running different things. How different can they be? So at a high level, we'll talk a little bit about the industry. So to start out with, if you look at just in terms of the number of manufacturers, it's quite different. There's about 7 major OEMs, right? PACCAR makes Peterbilt and Kenworth, and you got Freightliner that owns a couple different brands as well. The off-highway world's completely different. There is way more complexity. There are way more manufacturers, and truthfully, although we show about 40 of them, there is really probably a lot more than that when you consider all the minor manufacturers. And they're also more complicated. In the truck world, at the end of the day, you really have 4 major things. You have your engine, your ABS, your cab, and your transmission. When you start getting into off-highway, it just gets more complicated with the hydraulics and instrument panels and GPS systems and all the other things that start to really happen in that industry. The engine manufacturers is absolutely crazy as well. You go from just a handful in the truck industry to over 20 different manufacturers. And we're going to talk to you about some of the rebranding that goes on in this entire world for the off-highway diagnostics. And the other one is the diagnostic connectors. In the truck world, we have 3, and we're going to show you those. And there's over 60 different actual connectors that are used in the off-highway industry. And the other thing is, if you really look at it kind of industry by industry, in the automotive industry, there's a ton of options. And we all know this. There is almost an unlimited number of aftermarket options and OEM options. Then you kind of get into truck. And yeah, there's usually a handful. You can get your OEM stuff. You can get your aftermarket stuff. But there's not a ton on some of the manufacturers. Then you get to off-highway. Off-highway, as many of you know, can be difficult. There's not a lot of options out there. We're going to talk about those, and we're also going to talk about some of the reasons that happens. So let's talk about kind of some of the reasons behind a lot of that. So as you know, in the automotive industry, there's the right to repair, there's access to information to tool manufacturers to build these things. And that hasn't been because the automotive and truck industry have willingly given that. It's been legislated that they have to give that. So you know the right to repair for automotive. There's also a memorandum of understanding for the HD world that only came out the last couple years and still fully hasn't taken effect. And now for off-highway, there's absolutely nothing. There's no real regulations or government intervention to allow people access to OEM tools or aftermarket tools or repair information. So that's one reason. Another one is the lack of an industry organization. So in the automotive world, everyone's kind of vertically integrated. You buy a Ford, it's a Ford engine with a Ford ABS system on a Ford vehicle. The truck world, we don't really have that. We have Bendix that's used on a variety of OEMs. We have Cummins engines used on a variety of OEMs. So they're not completely vertically integrated. To a degree, some of them are. But what that meant at the end of the day was that everyone had to kind of play nice and play in the same sandbox and work together because of all that same technology being used on a variety of manufacturers. So the other thing that really happens too is when people are developing aftermarket tools for automotive, it's pretty easy to go down the street and go rent a car. Same thing with truck. If you want to go develop some off-highway or some on-highway software for your local Cummins engine, pretty easy to go put your hands on one. They're readily available. They're all over the marketplace. But when it comes to off-highway equipment, very, very difficult because there is so much of it. There are so many variants of it. No one has a complete list of all the equipment and all the models and all the things that go into them. And it's really hard for people to find access to these things. Some of them, sure, super easy to get your hands on. But you're going to see some pictures of some equipment on here that maybe you don't even recognize. And that's because there's just such a variety of specialty equipment that is built for everybody. And then we also need to back into the OEMs refuse to sell the software. So even though that they exist, they're out there, the manufacturers out there, if you've ever tried to go buy John Deere software, Caterpillar software, Volvo software for off-highway equipment, you found that it's been very difficult or almost impossible. And even to make matters worse, they've made proprietary tools. So what I mean by proprietary tools, these are proprietary tools. So if you want to go get the John Deere OEM software, what you would have to do is you'd have to buy it, and it's the one in the middle and the bottom. It says John Deere Service Advisor. You would need to go buy that, and that adapter, by the way, is going to run you about $1,500. And then you'd have to go get the software. But now you also going to work on Caterpillar. So now I got to go buy the $1,000 Caterpillar, the CATCOM 3 adapter, because that's the only thing that will work with their proprietary CAT ET software. And then we have a Vocom in the picture and that Case New Holland one in the upper right corner. That adapter by itself is $2,500. So what does this all mean? It means if you actually went out there and were able to purchase all the hardware needed to connect to every single one of these, it would run you at least $20,000. That's just the hardware, all right? We haven't even talked about the software. So you'll find the software is almost impossible to get from all of these manufacturers. If you've ever tried it, you know what I'm talking about. If you go online, I guarantee you will find it, and I guarantee you will probably find it on Alibaba or AliExpress or some website that ends in .cn for China. And I can tell you what you're finding is bootleg, pirated copies of software that's out there. It's old versions. Most don't work. The other thing that you'll find, and I hear it all the time because people call us and say, hey, how much for a CATCOM adapter? And we say, oh, well, they're about $1,300. And they go, well, I can find it online for $200. Well, what they're finding online is a Chinese clone. In the case of the CATCOM 3, it's actually a CATCOM 2 put into the guts of a CATCOM 2, put into a case of a CATCOM 3. And yes, you can probably buy it from China. Will it work? Maybe, but probably not. So it just gets very difficult to get the software from the OEMs, and we don't see that changing anytime soon. So here we have cable options. So we hinted on this a little bit earlier. Truck world, pretty easy. We have our 6-pin cable. That's the one on the upper left corner, the gray one with the 6 pins on it. That was the standard from, well, when things became electronic on trucks. all the way up through the mid-2000s, and that's when the 9-pin came over. And the 9-pin's gone through some variations now. You'll notice the newer trucks since about 2014-ish, they'll have the green connector on them, and you also have trucks that still use the OBD2. It's mainly the import stuff, the Hinos and Isuzus and that like. But in the off-highway world, there's over 60 different cables. So it is just a totally different game when it comes to off-highway. And we actually have some great examples here, and I thought better to have Travis explain these to you than me. Travis is really the expert on these things. He's the one out there all day long hooking up and connecting to them. So Travis, why don't you kind of start talking about some of these cables that you see and the connection points and all the things that go into the off-highway world.
Okay guys, so looking at this first one here, this is a Bobcat T630, so we're looking at a skid steer. All right, on this particular machine, you're actually looking at two different cable options here. Now this one here is 2014 and up. If we were looking at one a little bit older, anything prior to 2014, Bobcat actually used Kubota engines in their skid steers. And then once 2014 came along and they've been partnered with Doosan, Doosan actually builds these engines and they relabel them as Bobcat. But so you're looking at two basically types of connectors here. You're looking at the one on the bottom side you see. This is what would get you into the engine diagnostic side. And this one you can see up here, it's kind of a little bit smaller on the top left up here. What this is a round cable. This allows you to get into the machine diagnostics of it. So you're going to run into a lot of this equipment where you may have multiple data link locations or multiple data links depending on what part of the machine you're trying to diagnose. And this is really where it gets difficult to decipher what I need to repair these machines. All right, this next one here, this is a Kubota skid steer. As you can see, we've got the picture of the cable here and it looks like it's in a really dirty spot. What that's actually under is underneath your armrest. You've got a little cup holder right there on your armrest, and you've got to take that apart and actually unplug from the harness down here. You can kind of see it down below where my finger is on the picture. You'll actually unplug that from the other data link, or from the data link itself there, and plug your diagnostic cable in. And whenever you get into some of this Kubota equipment, you'll notice that it doesn't necessarily power up your adapter unless the key's on. So then you run into other parts of it where you need additional cables to have, you know, a 12 volt there going to your adapter all the time, so you can actually run commands such as resetting your soot load and things like that that actually have to be back programmed into that ECU. All right, next one here is an extreme telehandler. All right, and this one you can see the cable at this point is hanging down about 8 inches below the panel here that we've removed. But in this case, this is a Deutz engine. Some of your other extreme telehandlers, you'll find Perkins engines in those. And in those cases, you'll actually find them on the side of the engine block. So it's going to determine not necessarily always what manufacturer the equipment is, but also what manufacturer the engine is that goes into it. And a lot of that determines where that data link location is at that point. All right. This is a Kubota farm tractor here. Kubota, if anyone hides their connectors, it's going to be Kubota. They bury them anywhere. In this particular case, I'm up here looking on the air cleaner of the machine, and it's got a resistor plugged into the end of it. Okay, so this isn't something that you're going to open up the tractor door and it's going to be right there in your face. The hardest part of this is just finding the connector locations. All right. And okay, this next one here, this is actually on a generator. All right, this one runs an Isuzu engine, so you can see here you've got an OBD2 connector. Isuzu on the off-highway world, in most cases, it's not going to power itself. Other cases, you know, if that Isuzu's in a John Deere Traco, maybe, then you will have it powering itself. But in this case, you'd need that external power again. And another thing to keep in mind with these generators is you actually have a diagnostic mode on these. And what I mean by that is just necessarily turning that key on doesn't power that ECU in that piece of equipment. So what you'll actually need to do is figure out how to get that generator in diagnostic mode so that ECM stays powered up long enough for you to do your diagnostics. Depending on your manufacturer there, that could be anything from holding down the up and down arrows on your hour meter button. It may be actually done through the display. And we've even seen some cases where in your fuse block you actually have a diagnostic fuse you need to put in that location to keep that ECU powered so you guys can run your diagnostics. All right, we're looking at a HOM roller next here. As you can see, there's an access panel right here where your steps are, where you climb into that machine. That also houses a circuit board and your fuse block as well. But one thing to keep in mind is you may not necessarily be able to just pull a plastic panel off to get to something. Sometimes you have to unbolt things. We've actually ran into some cases with some excavators, Hyundai for example, where in order to actually get room in there to reach that diagnostic connector, you've had to drop the belly pan on the excavator. So sometimes, you know, what seems extreme there is actually how you go about connecting to these machines and diagnosing them. All right, JCB 51056. This is going to be a telehandler, and these are a little more confusing. You can see it's just a simple 9-pin connection here at the bottom, but actually right above where this arrow is, where that square hole is, and you can kind of see behind that fuse block there, you've actually got 3-pin connectors in there. What I mean by a 3-pin connector, something similar to your Cummins 3-pin, your engine connectors there. You've got 2 connectors back there. One for the vehicle side and one for the powertrain side. Now both of these as communication lines lead straight to that 9-pin, but you've got to swap these around depending on which part of the equipment you're trying to diagnose here.
All right, so Travis, thank you for going through that and kind of explaining. And there's a couple points I want to make at the end of the day when it comes down to all these things. So if you do the, you know, again, we go back to the survey. A lot of you do commercial trucks. A lot of you do some agricultural stuff. Automotive was a big percentage as well. What it really comes down to is in those worlds, especially commercial truck and automotive, when you plug your tool into the vehicle, it powers up your adapter. And in the off-highway world, that's more of a rarity than it is a common thing, really depending on what manufacturer you're working on. So a lot of times you have to run auxiliary power to your data link. So you do that by connecting cables to auxiliary power source, right, to a battery or to the cigarette lighter on a vehicle. Or you have, we have like these power banks that are basically big chargers that you would use for like charging up your phones. So it's just a different world completely when it comes down to that. And it's hard to find the diagnostic port you're looking at or trying to find where it is. And even when you do find it, the problem is it doesn't always power up your adapter and it doesn't always work. So for example, generators is a big one that happens all the time. Our clients will grade a tool, they'll plug it in, it'll power up the adapter. Everyone thinks everything's working great. They use the software to connect, and lo and behold, it doesn't actually work. You get a connection error, nothing happens, and you have to learn how to put these generators into diagnostic mode so that they can actually transmit data. So it gets really difficult. It's actually the number one issue we have, the number one complaint, or not complaint, the number one problem we get for a tech support department is where do I connect to this thing and why isn't it communicating? And it's taken us a long time, and that's really Travis's one of his main jobs was educating our technical support department on how these things work and how these things communicate. So we just thought it'd be great to go through kind of that exercise. Now I also want to explain a little bit more what's going on in the off-highway world, all right? And when I say off-highway, we're talking everything that doesn't roll down the freeway, right? Generators, farm tractors, construction equipment, all of those things. And there's a lot of rebranding that goes on. So for example, Cummins engines were used for a long time in Komatsu. Now, does Komatsu have their own engine now as well? They absolutely do. And the big thing I didn't understand is I always thought when I saw a cat yellow engine, it was a cat yellow engine. It was all made by Caterpillar. And it's really not. They're small engines, those 3.3s and 3.4s. Those are Kubota and FPT engines. They're not Cat engines, and I'll show you some pictures of that in a second. Bobcat, the older Tier 3 stuff, as you heard Travis talk about earlier, is actually Kubota engines. And John Deere actually began using some FPT engines on some models of their ag equipment as well. And then to make matters even worse, you have certain manufacturers of equipment that use multiple engines. So the examples I've outlined there, Doosan, they got Cummins, Scania, and Doosan engines all running in their equipment, and they may be naming them different things, they may not be, but it gets complicated and it makes it really confusing for people that are in the business and people especially that are learning it to figure out the proper way to connect to these things. So here's the example I was telling you about. Again, my family owns Caterpillar equipment. I've been a Cat fan for a long time, but Here's the perfect example. You'll see in the upper right corner where we actually have the cat model engine, the C3.4B. There's the engine model. It's painted yellow. It has all these things on there. But in fine print in the lower left, you'll see where it says, manufactured by FPT Industrial, SPA, in Italy. So it is quite common. All right, so we're going to talk about some of the diagnostic tools, but before we do that, I'm going to make you guys do another poll. Again, trying to keep you guys awake here a little bit. I'm going to ask you, what is the most important feature that you could get when you're looking to buy a diagnostic tool? What is important to you as a buyer when you want to have a diagnostic tool in the off-highway world? So if you could kind of go ahead and answer questions in there, we'll kind of leave it open here for a little bit. As soon as this gets done, I'm going to kind of go through the groups of diagnostic tools and really the options that are out there. There's no one fit for anybody. There's tools that range everywhere from $100 to $10,000, and we're going to cover them. So let's see what you guys come up with here. I hope the low upfront cost doesn't come up as the first one, because with most things, you kind of get what you pay for. So appreciate everyone answering the questions there. I saw a couple of responses coming in, but we will share the results with everybody and have them pop up there on your screen. So there you have it. What people are looking for is you want, and it's I think the things everyone knows, you want the wide coverage, you need technical support, and you need repair information. And I'm glad you guys answered it that way, because we're gonna kind of show you how all those pieces really need to fit together. I'm gonna go ahead and hide that, and we're gonna go on back to this slide. So at the very low end of the totem pole, we have our handheld code readers. You will see these things all over eBay, Amazon, again, Alibaba, AliExpress, anywhere you can find. We've bought a bunch of them. We've tried a bunch of them. Usually they don't work. When they do say, oh, we do Caterpillar engines, you come to find out it does like one model of a Caterpillar engine from 15 years ago. They range anywhere up to $1,000. You're not going to get technical support. You're probably not going to get updates. The thing that baffles us is people sell these handheld readers and they give you two cables. They give you an OBD2 and a 9-pin. And here we just showed you guys there's over 60 different cables. So, you know, these might have a good fit for somebody somewhere. If you just have some basic older equipment and you just want to grab some codes off of it, maybe it fits for what you're doing. We don't sell any of these. We've tried them. They're not good. They kind of are what they are. So we'll go over here to the next slide. And the next slide is actually one of our programs here. So again, I'm putting this about one notch up from a handheld code reader. So this is a universal program called PF-Diagnose. If a lot of you on this watching this probably have used it before. It's a universal program really designed around commercial trucks and OBD2 protocols used in automotive. So the good thing is a lot of equipment manufacturers actually do use the SAE standards for their ECMs and diagnostics, right? So John Deere, for example, you can buy this program and it'll read your commercial trucks, it'll read your automotive, it'll read your John Deere fault codes, and it'll read some of the live data. So for people that just kind of want to do the basics and they only care about things that are a 9-pin or OBD2 or 6-pin, the older stuff, it will work. You're just, honestly, you're not going to get a ton of mileage off of it, but it's also a lower price point. For the software only, you're talking $650. If you want to get it with the hardware with it, you're talking $1,000. And then you jump up to $2,500 if you want to get a laptop and included repair information and some other things with it. So it's a decent in-betweener zone. And then let's go kind of one notch up. And the notch up I'm going to go here is what I'm going to call the China import tools. Yes, that's what the code readers are, but these are the tools that you see advertised around the internet for anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000. Here's the thing with China, and this is probably not going to shock anybody, but all of these tools, they look and feel and are very, very similar. In fact, in our experience, they're actually about 99% the same. I have no way to prove this. This is just purely my opinion. But our belief here is that, you know, over in China, when you hire an employee from one company and they go to yours, it's kind of expected that you bring a little bit of proprietary information from their previous employer. And that appears what's happening in China is everyone's over there just kind of copying each other. They're all kind of the same. I can tell you in my experience, when I've hooked up to stuff, both truck and off highway, they'll be okay. They're not going to be great. And you just spend a lot of money. They work better with older equipment. But what I'm gonna do is have Travis talk about these just for a little bit, because he is really the one that has gone out there, hooked up to stuff. I constantly get new vendors approaching us saying, hey, we got this great tool, it works on off-highway. So I say, here, Travis, go give it a shot. And well, Travis, why don't you kind of take over here and talk a little bit about your experiences with them.
Okay, so with most of these tools, like he's saying, they're 99% similar. What he means by that is you're going to see the same limitations of the software. For example, you'll also see some things in there that they're kind of deceiving. One in particular that you see, and it always makes me laugh, is you'll see Kubota listed as a manufacturer in there, which is fine, but I also don't have a cable specialized for Kubota in that kit. So then at that point, when I choose that Kubota option, it's going to give me an option of some engines as a possibility there. Well, the only one they actually list is a Cummins engine. Okay, so I don't know if any of you guys, maybe it does exist out there somewhere and we've just never seen it, but I've never once ran into a Kubota piece of equipment with a Cummins engine that is electronic. Okay, so there's lots of little limitations like that. You also, the ones that you do connect with, like he said, it's going to be more of your standard protocols there, like you're seeing with your John Deere and your case. And when you get in there, the functionality is limited. And you may see other functions in there too as well that they just don't function in the software. So if I actually click it, I'm trying to run a particular test, the tool actually does nothing at that point. And same thing with doing some of the resets and things like that. You'd go in there, you'd run that reset command, you'd go back, you'd check that parameter, and nothing has actually changed there. Okay, so these are just, honestly, for the price point, it's not even really worth wasting your money on at that point. They are an in-between, but I feel like with the way they're marketed and the way that they just show things that they don't actually do, that it's really not in your best interest to go this route. I'm going to turn it back over to Tyler here for the next slide.
All right, thanks, Travis. Yeah, I mean, these tools are around in the truck industry as well. They're in the off-highway world. You know, I've been hoping and praying for years that there'll be a good one because of the price point, but it really hasn't happened. So let's now talk what I would call the premier diagnostic tools. These are the two tools you're about to learn about that I would really give a lot of credit to. Because their stuff actually works. All right. So I think that one of the things Travis hit on there was, yeah, the command's in here, it shows it, I do it, it doesn't work. Well, the reason why is when you develop software, you go through the development cycle. One of these things is actually validating that the commands work. So when you have corporations or companies in China validating commands that work on equipment located in the US, it's hard for these companies overseas to validate that. And you kind of end up with the situation that you have with a bunch of stuff that doesn't work. So let's move on. Let's talk about the two products that if I was in the business and running a shop or want to do diagnostics, these are the ones I'd want to do. And we'll talk about both companies, and then we'll talk about the pros and cons, and we'll kind of go over some stuff. And again, any questions you have, go ahead and just type them into the chat bar on the lower right. We'll definitely get to them here at the end if we have some time. So the first company I want to talk to you about is a company called Cojali. All right, so Cojali is located over in Spain, and they're a research, development, and innovation company. And how they actually got started as a company was creating and manufacturing components, cooling systems, servo clutches, ECUs, braking systems, valves, all those things. And they learned pretty quickly that things were going electronic, and they needed to be in that business. So the short version is Cojali got into the diagnostic business initially because they had to in order to keep developing these components and stay ahead of the curve. However, their software over recent years has become very, very good. So Cojali was founded in 1991. They are over in 90 countries, and they have an office over here in Miami, Florida. So here's what the Cojali tool looks like. On the right-hand side, we have a kit, and here at Diesel Laptops we kind of make special kits, so they come with hard carry cases and laptop colors, and I have a screenshot of what the software looks like there in the lower right corner. So I'm going to give you the real highlights of Cojali. So the very first thing, will it do dealer level commands? Can I do my DPF regens, and can I program injectors and cylinder cutout tests and all those things, soot resets, and all those things I want to do on a vehicle, not just on the engine, but on the machine side, the cab side, the transmission side. Absolutely, you can do those things. They, as a company, Cojali has 4 modules. They have a truck module, a construction module, an agricultural module, and a marine module. They also have a thing called GRP, Garage Resource Planning Module. This is basically a way for you to manage your repair orders, what you've done on trucks, your history, all of those things. And Cojali is a required annual fee. All right, so there's some stark differences here between this one and the one I'll show you here in a second. But they have a very great product. We are a Cojali dealer. They are very, very aggressive in terms of bettering their software. I'll talk to you about that with this another company in a second and kind of give you our view and our opinion on what is going on. All right, so TEXA is another company. They're also in Europe. They're located in Italy. They were founded in 1992. They're one of the first companies to really originate a multi-brand approach towards commercial trucks. All right, so they've been doing this for a while, and they are actually the factory OEM tool for a lot of companies. So I have them kind of listed there, but yes, Daimler, Land Rover, Jaguar, Volkswagen Audi, BMW, Ducati, NV Agusta, all these Italian companies that you see. And you know, if you've ever bought anything for your wife or girlfriend and it was Italian made, you probably know it wasn't cheap and it was some really, really good quality. TEXA's no exception with that. They really have a high standard. That picture you see on the left, you may think that's the front of their building. It is not. That is the roof of their building. They do a class act job. And besides diagnostic tools, these people do not make parts. Like Cojali, they make hard parts and electrical parts. TEXA doesn't do that, but they do make other diagnostic tools. They're not sold here in the US. Air conditioning to recharge stations, exhaust gas analyst systems. They have some tools for motorcycle as well. They have an oscilloscope. So they're all involved in the diagnostic world. So again, will TEXA do all those dealer level commands that I mentioned that Cojali will do? Absolutely, without a doubt. We have sold a ton of TEXA. We are the largest TEXA dealer in North America. They have 5 modules, so they do theirs a little bit different. So they have bike and automotive, which Cojali does not. Those are upgrade modules that are available. The auto module, that is more geared towards supercars and the very, very high-end equipment. So if you're working on Porsches, Ferraris, Maseratis, great stuff. They're not quite there yet for some of the more common stuff, Toyota and Honda and Acura and that type of stuff you see over here in the States. The stark difference here is a couple things. One, they only have one off-highway module. So their off-highway module does both truck and ag, while the Cojali, as you recall, had 2 different modules. So there's a little bit of a price thing you can get there as well with the needle kind of leans in Cojali's favor a little bit if you're only working on construction or only ag. And both software have a consistent interface on both of them. And the difference here is the TEXA license never expires. So with Cojali, yes, you have required annual fees. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and why that is. And we have the TEXA that has no required annual fees, but you no longer get updates and support after that first year. You have to buy a support package every year. So at the end of the day, you probably end up paying for the support and renewals regardless. All right, so the question we get asked is, which is better? And really, that depends on you. That does not depend on us. So in certain things, we find TEXA is better, and certain things we find Cojali is better. And it really depends on the makeup of your fleet. And here's the weird thing for us. We're a TEXA dealer, we're a Cojali dealer. I'm probably gonna end this broadcast and they're both either gonna be really happy or maybe not with me, but it's okay. We're trying to do the best thing for the customer. It's our stance at Diesel Laptops to put the best product in front of the customer to make you happy. That's really what we're trying to do here. So in this case, if you're working more in agriculture, I would actually lean towards the Cojali, mainly because of the John Deere coverage being a bit better than the TEXA. Now, if you're purely working on construction equipment, I would lean you more towards the TEXA tool as well. Right? So besides the coverages I kind of have lined up there, there are some other kind of stark differences. First of all, putting them side by side, you have an employee, he's never used either of them. He is going to pick up the Cojali interface and the usage and the menu flow and understand how to use the tool quicker. All right. The TEXA software, it's still easy to use. There's just a little bit of a more learning curve in terms of the interface and how to connect and which cables to pick from and all those things. The other is the annual fee. Again, TEXA is optional, Cojali is required. Yes, they are about the same price. Yes, you can go a little bit cheaper with the TEXA, but if there's one thing you'll learn with off-highway, at the end of the day, everybody needs help, everybody needs support, everybody needs updates. Customers usually end up buying it anyway. And then let's talk about the updates. So Cojali does 3 updates, and they can put them on the calendar for you for the next 3 years on what dates you're going to get those updates. And TEXA, they're more of, we're going to do 3 to 5, and when they're done, and they do small patches in between. So you end up doing a lot more updates with TEXA. They're a lot smaller, and Cojali's are much bigger. But I can tell you both companies do a tremendous job developing new content. They do a tremendous job validating that it works. And they do a great job following up and validating when there are issues. This is not an easy thing that either of these companies are attempting to do. They're basically trying to give you one tool with one piece of hardware on one software platform that will work with every make, model, commercial truck, and off-highway piece of equipment that you ever see. Are you going to have connection problems? Are you going to have issues? Absolutely. That's not even a question, if you will. But we want you to make sure that you know what you're getting in for. They are great tools. We've sold a ton of them, and they will do all those things that you want it to do. All right. So now that you kind of know the tools, and remember we have the code readers, we kind of have the mid-range tools, and then we have the premier tools. At the end of the day, this goes back to the survey question we just asked you. You need more pieces to the puzzle. And we say this no matter if it's truck, no matter if it's off-highway, you need repair information, you need support, you need parts information, and you need training. And when I talk about support and training, I don't talk about making sure your software works. I talk about actually making sure we have diesel technicians that can help you. And when I talk about training, it's the same way. It's just not how to use the software. It's how to make your technicians better at the job that they do every day in this ever-changing world that we're in. So let's talk about some of those as well, because these are really the things that Diesel Laptops does that is different than everybody else in the industry. So we spend a tremendous amount of time, money, and resources every month developing repair information. So there's some samples there of what you get. No matter what tool you buy from us on these upper end tools, you get this stuff. We have a database that has over 1,000 different ECUs and has every fault code and how to fix it. We have that for truck, we have that for off-highway, we have tools to cross-reference parts, wiring diagrams, component locators, torque specs, remove and replace instructions, all of that. Is it a complete library? Absolutely not. But I can tell you in an average month, to give you a little bit of openness on what we do here, wiring diagrams in particular and component locators, we produce almost 4,000 pages of that content every single month. And there's just a mountain of it to go through, and we do try the best to prioritize it with our clients. This is an example of our off-highway software. So if you kind of look on the screen where it says search all and make an ECM, very easy to use. You just kind of pick your make, your ECM, and you go through the code tree, find your code, and we tell you about that code and where it got set. And we do sell it individually, but it does come with your package. The other one is training. So we learned really quickly when we first started selling diagnostic tools that just providing a customer a tool, a diagnostic tool, providing them repair information wasn't even enough. We have a staff of around 30 people in our tech support department. In our training department, we have 3 people now in our training department. Got a little ahead of myself there. So in our training department, what we really learned is that it started with just doing live webinars, doing live one-on-ones, showing people how to use the software, but it has quickly changed. So now we do actually hands-on courses that involve electrical. We do after-treatment courses. We do engine-specific courses. We're launching a hydraulic course here in the near future. And currently we do those in Columbia, South Carolina. And we've now expanded to Columbus, Ohio, and we'll also be in Florida as well with the plans to go nationwide. So we really believe when you get a tool, we want to make sure you have opportunities to do training both online and offline, and we want to make sure you have the opportunities to come to our classes. And of course, all these premier tools that you buy, you get a voucher to come to one of our free classes. So technical support is the other one. I could not imagine working by myself out in the field trying to connect to a variety of equipment, not knowing what to connect to or what to do. So our technical support department is about 30 people. We add a couple every month, and they are both diesel technicians and they're computer experts. And this is not an easy thing they do. Our technical support department has to help everybody that buys a $10 cable or they purchase a $10,000 diagnostic tool, it doesn't matter. They have to support these people in that regard. All right. So they also have Spanish-speaking people in there, and I believe we added a couple other languages as well. And we go from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. And we also added a Saturday shift as well. So those guys are here to help you. It's one of the strong things that we do. We want to make sure if your guy's struggling at all, don't just close the laptop and chuck it across the garage and call it garbage. Call our tech support. Odds are it's something really simple and easy for you to do. So now some free stuff for everybody. Let's talk about that. So for you that are in the truck parts world, we have 2 free tools for you. The first one is a platform called Truck Parts Cross. So if you've never gotten it, it is a universal platform that has primarily heavy-duty truck, but we do have quite a bit of off-highway part numbers loaded on there and quite a few automotive parts loaded on there as well. But it is a 100% free platform that will allow you to cross-reference parts to your heart's content. You can do it on your iOS device, your Android device, your website, your desktop application, all those places. And there's some really cool stuff we have coming up here that I can't quite talk about yet, but it is coming that is really going to, I think, blow everyone's mind once we come out with it. And the other one here is truck fault codes. So today we have, again, an iOS, an Android, a website, and a desktop application for you to look up fault codes, absolutely free. So just go to your Google Play or your iTunes store or go to truckfaultcodes.com and you can download or use truck fault codes. And currently on there, it's a freemium product. The free version allows you to view basic info. The paid version, which is $200 a year, allows you to view wiring diagrams, component locators, torque specs, and a variety of other things. If you use code SIG365 when you sign up, and you have to sign up through the website with that code, you will get 1 free year of that web platform. All right? SIG365 for truckfaultcodes.com. For everybody watching this video, you are more than welcome to get a free 14-day trial of either kit. There is no payment information required. It includes everything we do here at Diesel Laptops. I never went over the prices on these tools just to give you some guidelines because there are some variations. People end up needing to buy new cables. You can expect to spend anywhere on these premier level multi-brand tools are going to be in that $7,500 to $8,500 price range. All right. So now if you don't need some cables or you need ag only or construction only, there's definitely some money you can save there. You can get combo kits that include the truck stuff. You can add on automotive, all kinds of options to be included with that. So with that said, that really brings us to the end of the presentation. And at this point, I think we've taken up a good amount of everyone's time, but I'm going to ask Travis just 2 more questions here, just because they kind of came to me as I was watching here. So Travis, of all the things you've connected to, and I know tech support's coming to you constantly, asking you about cables and connection points and all those things, what's some of the more difficult or kind of the craziest things you've seen in terms of trying to find these diagnostic ports and help people get connected?
Okay, so first and foremost, we were talking about the Hyundai excavator earlier, trying to get to that 3-pin connector, having to drop that belly pan. But some of the other crazy ones we've seen, Genie telehandler, for an example, actually pulling the instrument cluster out, so your gauge cluster there, and the cable being buried behind that. And of all places to look, that's not the first place you're going to. So a lot of times you're just going to have to follow those CAN lines coming off that ECM to find that data link. Other crazy ones I've seen, obviously a lot of them are right there by your fuse box, but a lot of times you'll just find them buried in the dash somewhere. I actually had one, I believe it was a Volvo machine, but you actually pulled the ashtray out of the machine and the data link was located below that.
Yeah, thank you, Travis. I mean, it's really an interesting world, and what goes on here in the off-highway world is a lot of these manufacturers, especially the smaller ones that are giving us all the problems where they hide and bury stuff, it's because they're buying that equipment from someone else. They're buying the engine from someone else, they're buying the hydraulic system from maybe somebody else, and then they're ending up with where they're at. So it's a complicated world. The short version here is, you guys just really make sure if you're buying a diagnostic tool, Make sure even if you don't buy it from us, please buy a place that gives you some support, some help, some repair information. I know you're going to struggle if you buy it and you don't get those things. There's other places to buy. I totally get it. Hopefully we gave you some great valuable information through this entire thing. We hope some of you take up our offer for the free 14-day trial. Everybody that's signed up is going to get a survey. If you fill the survey and you put your address in there, we will send you some free swag. So our marketing department's all geared up. They got a bunch of free giveaway, gimme stuff to give away with that. In that survey as well, you can ask for the 14-day trial, or you can just call us or email us at the number that's listed there. So I just want to thank everyone for attending the webinar. It's been great, and we plan on doing things like this about every 6 to 8 weeks. So hopefully we'll see everyone on the next webinar and hopefully get some value out of it. Thank you for attending.